Her lipstick was smudged. That was the first thing I noticed. Not the music pulsing through the rooftop speakers. Not the glittering skyline behind her. Not even the guy whose hand was resting on her lower back like he had every right in the world to be there. Just the lipstick. That exact shade of burgundy I bought her last Christmas. Vintage blood, or something like that. I remember because I stood in line for an hour at that overpriced cosmetics store while she texted me photos of dresses she wanted me to surprise her with. She used to wear that lipstick for me. Tonight, it had faded just slightly along the edge of her smile, and I knew exactly how it got that way. She didn't see me at first. She was laughing at something he whispered. She touched his arm, not in a flirty way, worse. In a familiar way, like they'd done this before. Like this was now routine. I stood near the bar with a drink I didn't order. Someone left it behind. I don't even remember what it was. My hand was shaking too much to sip. Then, she turned. She saw me. Her eyes caught mine across the crowded room. For the briefest second, I thought I saw a flicker of panic. Guilt. Something human. But no. She smirked, tilted her head, and walked out. No words. No apology. No explanation. She left him behind, too. Like she didn't want witnesses for the story she'd have to tell me later. Like she needed to get ahead of whatever narrative I was about to form. What she didn't know, what she couldn't know, was that I'd already heard everything. 3 nights ago. Thin walls. Her voice. A conversation she thought I was too asleep to overhear. She'd said, "He's too soft. He'll never leave. He needs me." I didn't move. I didn't react. I just listened. She thought she'd broken me tonight. She thought I'd go home, cry into a pillow, maybe beg. She had no idea I'd already moved the money. She had no idea what was inside the envelope I left under her pillow. She thought she was the only one keeping secrets. But tonight, she'll find out. I don't break quietly. I didn't chase after her. That's what she expected. That's what everyone expects from guys like me, the quiet ones. The ones who hold bags outside dressing rooms and remember anniversaries she doesn't. But not this time. I stayed at the party. Stayed long enough to watch her lover, because I'm done calling him anything else. Awkwardly look around when he realized she'd vanished. He paced a little, checked his phone, then shrugged and started chatting with a woman in a red dress like nothing had happened. I stood maybe 15 feet away, invisible as usual, until I turned and left without saying goodbye to anyone. The drive home was silent, except for the sound of my own heartbeat thudding in my ears. It wasn't anger. It wasn't even sadness anymore. It was clarity. I parked a block away from our apartment. I didn't want her to hear the car if she made it back before me. I didn't want her to know I'd gotten ahead of her for once. I walked in, turned on exactly one light in the living room, and sat down at the dining table. The envelope was already there, waiting. Thick. Sealed. Not dramatic. Just enough. Inside, printouts, statements, timelines, screenshots. The kinds of things you only collect when you stop believing in words. Talia had no idea I had been collecting them. For months. The cloud backups she forgot were still connected to my device. The email receipts. The Uber rides from nights she said she was just going out with Julia from work. The timestamps that never lined up. Her lies were precise, but never careful enough. I even printed out the receipt from the hotel where she booked a room under her maiden name. Bold move. Sloppy execution. She always underestimated me. I was just Darcy, the guy who makes grilled cheese on Sundays. I was her comfort, her quiet place, her dull safety net. But not tonight. Tonight, she'd walk in expecting the usual silence, maybe a few tears. Maybe I'd even pretend I believed her latest excuse, something about having a panic attack and needing air. She wouldn't expect the letter taped to the inside of her closet door. She wouldn't expect the spare key to be gone. She wouldn't expect the locks changed. She wouldn't expect what I said at the end of the letter. But she should have. Because the one thing Talia never realized is that the quiet ones, we hear everything. She didn't knock. She used her old key. The one I forgot to take off her keyring 2 months ago when I first started building my silence. I heard the rattle as she tried the door, then again, more aggressively, confused. The deadbolt didn't budge. Neither did I. I sat on the couch in the dark, waiting. When she finally rang the bell, I stayed still. It was only after the third buzz that I heard her voice, muffled through the wood. "Darcy?" she called, the fake concern already rehearsed. "Are you okay?" I think the lock's jammed." I didn't reply. Let her think the lock was broken. Let her rattle it while her panic rose in her chest like smoke. She had never been locked out of anything before. Not jobs, not people, not relationships. Doors opened for her. Smiles followed her. She didn't know what it was like to be left standing in the cold. Darcy, seriously, she tried again. It's me. That word, me, as if it still held weight. As if it was supposed to unlock something inside me. But it didn't. Not anymore. I let her stand there for 5 more minutes before the hallway fell quiet. She must have seen the note taped to the door by then. A single sheet, centered, with 5 words written in my small, uneven handwriting. Read what's inside. Carefully. I'd spent 4 hours crafting the contents of the envelope. Not out of spite, but because I needed her to feel the way I had felt. The tremble in the throat when you realize you've been erased from someone's heart. The hollowness in the chest when love is replaced with strategy. The hotel confirmations. The messages to Nash where she joked about my pathetic little check-ins. The screenshots of her telling her sister, he'd never leave me. He doesn't have the backbone. Now she'd know what a backbone feels like when it snaps. She didn't scream. Didn't bang on the door. I watched from the peephole as she just sagged. She slid down the wall slowly, her dress pooling at her knees, mascara starting to trail. And still, I felt nothing. No triumph. No anger. Just something quiet and hollow. Like I was watching a stranger experience the beginning of consequences. But I hadn't even started yet. She stayed curled on the hallway floor for almost 20 minutes. At one point, I thought she might fall asleep out there. But eventually, she stood up like someone rising from wreckage, slow, confused, humiliated, and walked away with her heels in her hand. I didn't move. I didn't say a word. I just listened to the echo of her footsteps down the stairs and tried to breathe through the nausea twisting in my gut. You'd think I'd feel relief. Or maybe some twisted sense of justice. But all I felt was the cold. And silence. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat up scrolling through the photos again. The ones she thought she deleted from her phone. I had saved every last one. There was one where she stood at the edge of a hotel bed, wearing the sweater I'd given her on our 5th anniversary. She was laughing. Behind her, Nash's hand was visible, reaching for her. That photo ruined me more than anything. Not because of what she was doing, but because she looked happy. Genuinely happy. I hadn't seen her smile at me like that in over a year. I kept asking myself, how long had I been optional? The next morning, she didn't come back. No calls. No texts. Just radio silence. I knew her well enough to understand what that meant. She was calculating. Deciding on an angle. How to spin it. How to twist the facts just enough so she could still be the one who was confused, or scared, or emotionally neglected. That was always her fallback. Blame the atmosphere. Not the storm she created. But I didn't need to wait for her version. I already had mine. I opened my laptop and began writing the email. Subject line, in case you hear from her. It went out to 4 people, her parents, her sister, our shared landlord, and her boss. Not a smear campaign. Just facts. Neutral tone. Dates. Evidence. I attached the files. No commentary. I even ended it with, please let me know if you need anything from me to verify what's in this message. Talia's always been good at controlling the story. But this time, I had the ink. I hit send, leaned back, and stared at the ceiling fan spinning above me like time was folding in on itself. She had no idea what I'd just done. But by nightfall, she would. I expected the first message to come from her sister. Olivia never liked me. Always thought I was too subdued, too quiet, too boring for someone like Talia. But surprisingly, the first reply came from her boss. A one-line response. Thank you for the transparency. That's all he said, and yet it felt like a silent thunderclap. I knew Talia was gunning for a regional promotion next quarter. I also knew Nash reported to that same manager. She had built a house of cards inside a tornado. An hour later, my phone finally rang. Her number. I watched it vibrate on the table like it might explode. I didn't answer. Let her stew in the unknown. A few minutes later, another ring. Then a voicemail. Her voice sounded strange, shaky but sharp. Darcy, I saw what you sent. This is a massive overreaction. We need to talk. I don't know why you're doing this. You're being cruel. Cruel. That word stuck to me like cold glue. I almost laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it was so predictably dishonest. She thought I was cruel for not letting her control the narrative, for removing the stage lights and forcing her to speak under daylight. She always hated daylight. It made her makeup crack. I didn't respond. Instead, I left the apartment. Not to escape, but to finish something. I drove to the storage unit we'd rented together 3 years ago, back when we were planning to renovate the kitchen and needed a place to stash the extra furniture. She hadn't been there in months, but I had. Last week, in fact, I'd removed her name from the lease. I walked into the office and handed the clerk a sealed manila envelope. Inside were the last of her things. All the gifts from her old boyfriends she kept hidden in boxes labeled art supplies. The Polaroids, the scribbled notes she once told me were meaningless, just old memories. I didn't throw them away. I didn't torch them in some dramatic movie moment. I just returned them to her. In full. Without commentary. Without warning. I left the unit, locked the door, and texted her a single sentence. Your storage unit lease has ended. They'll call you. Let her wonder what was still inside. Because sometimes, silence cuts sharper than revenge. 2 days passed without a word. Not a knock. Not a voicemail. The silence was strange, too clean, too careful. Talia was many things, but she wasn't someone who gave up. She was a strategist, and I knew she was somewhere drafting a script, figuring out how to take back control of the story she no longer owned. That silence was her version of gathering ammunition. But on the third day, she came back. Not in tears. Not in anger. She showed up wearing that same silver coat she used to wear when we went to winter markets. The one with fake fur around the hood that made her look softer than she really was. She smiled at me through the peephole. I could tell she thought she still had power. I opened the door, not to invite her in, but to make sure she saw what was missing. The walls were bare. All the framed photos gone. Her paintings? Wrapped and boxed. The mug she used every morning? Replaced with a plain white cup. There was nothing left of her in the space, except a single envelope on the coffee table. She walked in slowly, like she couldn't believe what she was seeing. Darcy, she started, her voice cautious. You don't have to do all this. You're hurt. I get it. But we can fix this. I didn't say a word. I just pointed at the envelope. She opened it. Inside was a printout of the credit card charges from our joint account. She skimmed it, confused at first. Then her face changed. All her transactions were gone. Not just gone, transferred. I'd closed the joint account that morning and moved my half elsewhere. Legally. Neatly. I took only what was mine, I finally said. The rest is yours. I want no part of it. She looked like I slapped her without touching her. You're really doing this? I nodded. I already did. She stood there frozen, like her feet weren't sure which direction to run. I watched her carefully, waiting to see if the mask would drop, if she'd scream, cry, break. But instead, she laughed. Not loudly, not wildly, just bitterly. You were never strong enough for me, Darcy, she whispered, eyes narrowed. And you never will be. Then she turned and walked out. That was the last time I saw her face to face. But it wasn't the last thing she'd try. Not even close. After she walked out that day, I thought the worst was over, that her silence would stretch into something final. But I underestimated her need to be in control. Talia was never the kind of person who let go without rewriting the story in her favor. And true to form, the next week, I started getting messages from people I hadn't spoken to in years. Old college friends. A cousin I barely see. Even my old boss from a job I left 5 years ago. All of them asking some version of the same question. Hey, I heard what happened. Are you okay? She told me you've been struggling? At first, I didn't get it. Then I did. Talia was laying the groundwork for her next masterpiece, the narrative of a fragile husband unraveling, while she tried her best to hold everything together. I was apparently unstable, depressed, obsessive. The implication was always there, between the lines. But I hadn't even scratched the surface of what she was hiding. I found the flash drive tucked inside an old art supply box while clearing out the hall closet. Labeled nothing but a date. Just a year, actually. At first, I almost tossed it, thinking it was one of her photography projects. But something told me to plug it in. And what I found? Emails. Hundreds. Not just with Nash, but with 2 other names I didn't recognize. Conversations dating back 2 years. Coordinated trips, code names for hotels, even a Google spreadsheet of cover stories she kept updated like a to-do list. She had created an entire system. A double life organized down to the hour. I couldn't move. I just sat there, reading, scrolling, not even blinking. It wasn't just infidelity. It was cruelty, calculation, and fun. She enjoyed the manipulation, the thrill, the lies. And suddenly, the way she smiled as she walked out of our apartment made sense. She hadn't just hurt me. She studied me. So I did what I should have done weeks ago. I called her father. When I called her father, I didn't expect much. We'd never been close. He was always a distant man, polite but cold, like shaking hands with a statue. But when I told him what I found, when I offered to forward the files, there was a long pause on the line. And then he said, "Send them. All of them." 20 minutes later, he called me back. No small talk, just a sigh. And then, "You don't owe her silence anymore." That one sentence broke something open in me. The next few days were strange. Quiet, but heavy. Talia didn't call. Not once. But words started to ripple through the edges of her world. Her sister messaged me again. Just 3 words this time. "I believe you." Her boss sent a formal apology. Even Nash's name disappeared from her company's website within 48 hours. I didn't ask questions. I didn't need to. The story was unraveling without my help now. And me? I packed a single bag and booked a week in a cabin by the lake. No phone calls. No emails. Just air and silence and a coffee mug that didn't remind me of her. It was the first time I breathed without clenching my jaw. I used to think closure had to be loud. A confrontation. A final scream. But sometimes, it's just a moment at sunrise when you realize you're no longer waiting for an apology. That flash drive is now buried in the back of my drawer. Not as a trophy, but as a reminder that being broken doesn't mean being helpless. I'm not fixed. I'm not suddenly brave. But I'm not small anymore, either. If she ever comes back, there won't be a door to knock on. Only a memory. And even that is fading. What was the most shocking moment in this story for you? Was it the flash drive? The letter? The silence? Let us know in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe for more real stories where the quiet ones finally speak.